I'm in debt and burned out. My energy levels and enthusiasm are struggling. How do I find my passion again and get my spark back? So this is a great question. There's a couple pieces here worth exploring. I've been here myself a couple times in my career, and I've learned a lot from these places and from getting myself out of these places. Now, of course, your mileage may vary, but what I will say is that we have to understand where our spark comes from. And for me, it's a good sign when I am getting out of bed in the morning, excited about what it is I'm doing, right? And now humans, right? We have our own brain chemistry. We've got serotonin, we've got dopamine, we've got all these things. Without getting too anatomical and removed from that, we'll keep it kind of humanized of a conversation, right? Not chemicalized as a conversation, but essentially you got to figure out what fulfills you. And we have things like human needs. Tony Robbins does a really good job with this in terms of like the 6 human needs. I think there's actually less than that. But in general, you can look at this kind of stuff. Some examples would be like significance and growth and connection and things like that, right? All the stuff that makes life fun and worth living so that we don't feel like we're just like getting by, but we actually feel like we're thriving and having fun and using the fucking one short life that we have on this planet and using it to its fullest and being playful and creative and just enjoying it, right? Because we're not meant to just be soul sucked for our whole existence here. You know, I mean, like that's how sad would that be if that's the case? So we need to find ways to take hold because our culture doesn't always reward and enforce this. A lot of us came up through more of a like 9 to 5 kind of culture, like time for money, this kind of thing, or like work during the week and you get your weekends off. And it's this kind of weird post-industrial relic of how things used to be. But we're back to a more free place, especially when you embrace the online world. But even barring that, right, you can run your brick and mortar. It should be fucking fun. It should be. If your clinic's not fun, if you're not having a really good time in your clinic, then there are likely skill gaps and system gaps that are just in your way. And sometimes it's 1 or 2 things that seem in hindsight that seem simple, like, oh, it's just that I just had to make a couple changes. And all of a sudden I'm making twice as much money every month and I'm having way more fun, right? That doesn't devalue the fact that those simple things were totally in a blind spot beforehand. And that's part of what we do here is to like look through these whole systems and go, okay, what's missing and where are the skill gaps? Sometimes it's soft skills, sometimes it's more technical skills, and then also the systems around it in terms of like how you actually implement what it is you're doing. So what I'll say here is consider the things that actually motivate you, the things that actually light you up. And what are the general themes? If you have an Eastern medicine background, you may already have a good sense of like 5 phases and kind of looking at personality types that way. I know there's a lot of ways to break down personality types, but I find it very helpful to be like, oh, you know, I'm more of a metal type person. I'm more of a wood type person, more of an earth type person, that kind of thing. Like the earth type person, very caretaking, right? It's like you get fed emotionally by giving and caretaking for other people. Now, every one of these personality types has like an excess and a deficiency to it. There's extremes where it can be pathological, but in general, you want to kind of find those sweet spots where like you thrive as a human and then figure out, you know, your practice isn't there just to meet your needs, obviously, but it can be a reciprocal and symbiotic relationship where you're meeting the needs of your community and you're getting your needs met in turn. So what I'll say about that in general is that if you kind of zoom out, no matter what it is you really get nourished by, whether it's, connecting with other people or having status or growing, like feeling like you're always growing, like all these kind of, like that's a very wood thing, right? Like growth, to have those types of tendencies. Those are the soft things. Your practice is meant to do, there's 2 sides to it. One is that you're going out in the world and you're helping other people. You're helping them get their lives back so that they can have an easier time meeting their needs, essentially, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works. And the part you receive is financial compensation to keep your business going and be able to live your life. And also, most likely, some emotional satisfaction of connecting with the people you're working with, watching them go through a journey, like being helpful, having something to contribute, having something valuable to offer so that you feel like what you're doing is worthwhile, right? There's the money piece coming back. Like, yes, you get paid. And then there's also this kind of emotional, spiritual payment that happens. And just because you're getting emotionally nourished by your practice doesn't mean that you're like you're not a vampire, like sucking the emotions out of the people coming to see you, right? This is positive sum. Everybody's fucking happy, right? The patients are happy getting better. You're happy because you did a good job. The patients are happy to pay you because you did a good job and nobody else could. They're in a tight spot and you got them out of it, and that's valuable. And they're happy to pay for that because that's how our world works, right? You're happy because you're making money. more than enough to cover your expenses, right? Nobody wants a broke fucking physician. You know what I mean? Like you got to be in a good, stable, more than stable place, right? And that doesn't mean you're taking advantage of people. That's part of it. You should be accumulating some form of wealth because what you're doing is valuable and you have to understand that. Besides the money piece, you're also getting your satisfaction, your enthusiasm. This is the opposite of burnout. So usually if there's burnout, it's because some form of that relationship is getting messed up. They're either working with people where they don't value what you're doing or like via payment, or they don't value what you're doing in terms of emotionally, right? And some of that's going to come down to your own self. Like, do you value what you're doing enough to charge for it? Do you value what you're doing enough to communicate that value to people so that they take you seriously? Right? Are you willing to, and this is what I mean about like skill gaps and things like that. Because every time I've been burned out in debt, right? Those two can go together, not every time, but it's like, dude, when you stop making money and you wind up in debt, you're not getting financially paid from your clinic. So it's easy to get burned out. It's easy to feel like what you're doing isn't mattering. I mean, there was a time where I remember thinking this is a kind of personal thing, but I remember thinking like, this is crazy. I'm out here. Who would come to me for help? Who would pay me for acupuncture? Right? And it's this weird psychology you get into. And then all of a sudden, all it takes is one person to be like, yeah, you helped my shoulder. I can lift my arm now. This is great. And then you go, what the fuck? I was under a spell, right? That was crazy. But until you snap out of that, you're still under the spell. And that's the burnout it's the spell. You fall into a spell. So there's different ways to do this. The big thing would be, one, recognize what's happening, right? And then just go, okay, is this because of money, emotional stuff? Like, what is it? Am I taking myself seriously? Do I see the value in what it is I'm doing? Do other people see the value in it? Where's the issue here? Do I need to build better systems? Am I not filtering patients well enough? Here's something that I will say is like, taking insurance can work, right? But a lot of times when you start to take insurance, the financial part goes down and you get a different type of relationship off the bat with people. It's not always this way. There are plenty of people who use their insurance and appreciate what you do, but there's a lot more people who pay cash and appreciate what you do percentage wise, right? You'll get people, because people who don't appreciate what you do aren't going to pay you out of their pocket, right? But people who don't care about what you do, don't appreciate you, they'll still let their insurance pay for it. And they're like going to the visits. And there's a whole can of worms we can get into about that. But essentially, taking insurance, third-party payments, when people don't have a lot of skin in the game, it's easier to attract a higher percentage of people who don't appreciate what you're doing. And they're just coming in, they're just going through the motions. And then guess what? You get sucked down to that lowest common denominator. And now you're just going through the motions. And then this career that fucking fueled you and lit you up and just maybe even saved your life, transformed your whole life. You're just like an automaton, just like putting in the needles for people who don't give a shit and aren't paying you very much at all. And then you're dealing with insurance on top of that. No wonder you're burned out, right? I mean, like when you put it that way. So not everybody is taking insurance that's burned out. You know, it's not a one-to-one correlation, but what I'm getting at is the model can influence the satisfaction level. And the insurance model is one of the least satisfying models out there. It just is. As we get up to like, okay, it's an all cash practice. Oh, more satisfying. It's an all cash practice with packages. Ooh, more satisfying, because guess who buys packages? People who are committed. Who are these people that are committed? Well, they're people who value what you do and they're getting better. And guess what? You're feeding on that too and going, wow, this is great. You know, these people are coming in, they're completing their treatment plans, they're getting better, they're telling their friends. It's positive. This is how you get out of burnout. Guess what else happens? You've got way better cash flow because you're getting paid ahead of time in 4-digit chunks. You know, it's like $1,000, $1,200, whatever at a minimum for somebody to buy a package. Rent's taken care of. Overhead's taken care of. You can fucking breathe during the month. It's a nice feeling. Money shouldn't change how we feel, but it does. I'll tell you guys something. This is a little aside, but your subconscious is extremely, extremely powerful. I keep these at my desk, right? They're copper bars. I'll tell you a secret. You know, you can get copper bars for these are I don't know, $10 or $20 a piece. This is not some huge thing, but in my mind, right? My subconscious, these are gold bars. I'm just sitting around doing work with fucking stacks of gold, right? Gold bars. I know this is going to seem like really weird, but it's like I keep all this kind of stuff around because I'm training my subconscious to get used to just having stacks of gold around, right? You got to get around the money thing like it's weird or something to be ashamed of. And you can start doing things that, I know it may seem like ostentatious, right? Like the stereotypical idea of a rich person is just like fucking Scrooge McDuck in his thing with just like money everywhere. But you can use a little bit of that. You can use a bit of that imagery, and you can keep these things in your world and keep telling your subconscious that you have plenty, and get used to that and feel good about that, right? And not have plenty and be like, oh, I'm hoarding the wealth and now I'm denying other people. You're not, right? You have it. It's fine. It makes you feel secure. It makes you feel like you're not in fight or flight mode all the time. You need to get used to like having value in a tangible form. So even something like this is a form of brain training for me, right? Because we live in a world where money equals survival at a certain level. And when you start to train your brain that we don't have to worry about that, then the survival instinct starts to calm down and you can actually start to think and have fun and do creative things, right? It's very, very hard. If you feel like you're drowning, it's very, very hard to paint a picture in that state, right? Because you're panicking. Drowning people are fucking terrified and they're dangerous. They're not creative and inspiring. So financially, if we feel like we're drowning, we're not necessarily going to be showing up doing our best work. Now, fortunately, there are systems, right? This is part of like my mission here, because a lot of this stuff really set me free. I mean, you want to talk about being in debt? I was like 50, 60K in debt and credit cards at a certain point. And guess what I was still doing? Mentorship, learning, investing, right? I just opened a new card to go, okay, I'm going to learn something here. And it's not like one program or whatever like does everything, but I mean, I've had some really significant mentors and I've learned a lot of things, and it's like you can be moving substantially forward. And yeah, it takes money, right, to do that sometimes. But same thing, I mean, going to acupuncture school, I was just signing student loan things, it was like a blank check. Like, yeah, I understand it's going to cost something, but this is thinking about my future, right? So you may be in debt, you may be burned out, and sometimes the way out is through. For me, it was because I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything else. Plan B is plan A, right? I'm just going to keep going. And it's not about doubling down on sunken costs, but it's about realizing that there is a growth arc to this, right? And then realizing that I do have certain skill gaps that were getting in my way. And there were systems I didn't know how to implement. Now I do, right? So obviously I've gotten myself out of that situation that was many, many, many years ago. But I still remember, the feelings every month of looking at the statements and going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Watching the interest come in. I mean, credit cards, they're there to like eviscerate you, but I've done it, I'm out of credit card debt. So it can be done. But the way to do it is you can't just spend money on random shit. You've got to invest in skills that pay you back. You've got to be able to look at what you've built, the systems you've built, and go, okay, I need to have a real honest conversation with myself and maybe get another set of eyes on this. Where are the weak spots? Where are the underdeveloped points? Where are all these things falling through the cracks? And then also be like brave enough to reinvent certain systems or maybe even run them in parallel. And this is one of the things like we do, like at the last summit, we talked about these hybrid kind of models because, most practitioners are not going to just close their brick and mortar and be like, I'm online now. You want to have a couple things going at once, and you want to be able to have some optionality, and there are steps you can take, and you start to implement that stuff. And the first time somebody pays you that you've never met, that's online, right? And they pay you and they send you like $5,000 for your program, it becomes real. You go, holy shit, this is real. All right, people are putting their money behind it. They've got skin in the game. I'm showing up. You're making your program. You're supporting the people. You're attracting more of them. Then they come back and they say, I've got a win to share. I couldn't climb stairs 2 weeks ago. Now I can. These herbs are amazing. The stuff in your program's changing my life. And you go, holy shit, this isn't just real for me. I'm getting paid. This is real for those people too. Their life's transforming. And then guess what? Your needs are getting met in terms of like significance, being able to contribute, growth. And you wake up and you're fucking happy. So it doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? When I reverse engineer this stuff, it's really about looking at skill gaps in systems. And the skill gaps sometimes are technical. Like, I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z thing. That's why you learn. And sometimes the skill gaps are more soft skills. Like, you don't know how to be a leader. You don't know how to, you haven't done certain things, sometimes very challenging things, and ask yourself very hard questions and come out the other side and been able to stand behind your pricing, right? And that's another reason I'm here, is because I want I want to share my infectious worldview with you because I keep it cultivated and I keep it very clean, and it opens up a lot of doors, a lot of doors. All right. I hope that helps. Get to work.